and esteemed keynote speakers. We would also like to extend our welcome to everyone watching us live on YouTube from different parts of the world. We feel grateful to have amongst us three legends of marketing, Professor David Acker, Professor Philip Kotler, and Professor Jagdish Sheth. It is an esteemed privilege to have you with us on the occasion of the book launch of Reimagining Educational Futures in Developing Countries, Lessons from Global Health Crisis, co-edited by Professor Vasha Jain. Professor Vasha Jain is a professor of marketing and the co-chairperson of the doctoral program and research at MICA, India. She has authored over 100 publications, including multiple papers in A-Star and A journals, and is the associate editor and the editorial board member at these journals. She is working on 5 books, primarily with Professor Sheth and Professor Acker, and is the recipient of more than 22 national and international awards. She has multiple gold medals in scholarship and is the vice chair of International Relations, Higher Education, Special Interest Group, and the American Marketing Association. She is also a visiting guest at Emory Business School, Atlanta, USA, visiting scholar at Greenwich University, London, and the Medill School, Northwestern University, USA. We are honored to have you with us, ma'am. We would now request Professor Vasha Jain to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Apurva. It's a complete delightful moment for all of us to be here. I would provide my warm greetings to everybody who's joined from different parts of the globe. And I would extend a warm welcome to our keynote speakers, three marketing legends, Professor Philip Kotler, Professor Jagdish Sheth, Professor David Acker. We are honored to have you all for this event. Thank you so much for being with us. I would like to welcome our President and Director of MICA, Professor Shailendra Raj Mehta, our Dean, Dr. Geeta Hegde, our faculty colleagues, friends, and our dear students. And it gives me an immense pleasure to even invite you all for this amazing book launch that we are doing on reimagining educational futures in developing countries, the lessons that we've learned from the global health crisis, which is published by Macmillan UK. And thank you once again for being with us and celebrating this auspicious movement. In higher education, we always talk about inclusive approach, integrated, co-created learning environment. And in the last 2 years, while this journey happened for the book, and we were doing this journey with our co-editors and the contributors, this all happened because while we were struggling to survive in this world due to COVID, and we faced numerous challenges in higher education. And the whole idea is to develop the book as a solution for these issues. And we had, 15 articles, which had 4 themes on organizational resilience, technology adoption, staff well-being, and reimagining the future. And we had 30 contributors from different parts of the world, which includes India, UK, Canada, Mexico, Spain, Vietnam, Nigeria, Australia, and Canada and South Africa and so on. And essentially the content of the book is centered around the blended learning approach with a focus on culture, seamless experience that we can provide to our stakeholders, digital transformations, and digital infrastructure, and primarily the adoption of AI, which is a very important area in higher education. So this book is essentially going to help the academia, industry, as well as the policymakers to learn about the tech-driven, inclusive, and humanistic higher education systems. To sum up, I would say that education is the best provision of the life's journey, which Aristotle has quoted. Now, with that note, I would like to invite our president and director of MICA, Professor Mehta, to share his insights about reimagining higher education. Professor Mehta.
Thank you so much, Professor Jain. It is really a pleasure to welcome you and the 3 legends that we have with us, Professor Philip Kotler, Professor David Acker, and Professor Jagdish Sheth. This really is a very proud moment that this book, Reimagining Educational Futures in Developing Countries, Lessons from Global Health Crises, co-edited by Professor Jain, along with Professor Mogaji, Professor Maringe, and Professor Henson. This is really a proud moment because, as you know, throughout the world, there is a huge emphasis on research. This is something that, especially in India, especially with the global rankings, research is now an integral part of what we do, and high quality research, not just research that is published in any kind of journal, but in the very topmost journals. And there, I think many scholars at MICA have stepped up and started doing so. And Professor Varsha Jain is front and center of that effort. As was mentioned, she has published numerous journal articles, but now she is publishing many books, of which this, the one that we are going to discuss today, is but one. And this whole journey is the journey of going through the phase of high quality publications into thought leadership, because that is something that is dearly and deeply missing in developing nations such as India. Even though we are now getting into high quality publications, getting to thought leadership is going to be even more important. And that is where the emergence of scholars such as Professor Varsha Jain and many others that we have at MICA, and indeed in the higher education ecosystem in India, that is going to be extremely important. And I'll close by saying that it would not have been possible without the mentorship of the wonderful senior scholars that we have here with us today. And we thank them for taking their time out today. I know all of you have such busy schedules, but that you've taken out the time to help us launch this book globally, I think that speaks volumes about who you are and what you've managed to help us with. So thank you very much again. And as I've done so in the past, we will unhesitatingly reach out to you for help in helping us take MICA and indeed the higher education ecosystem in India to the next level. Thank you, Professor Jain, for a wonderful book, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehta, for the kind words, and your valuable insights are always appreciated. And we are extremely grateful for all the kind help and support you've been providing in making that journey possible. And you use the right word, journey, because it's a constant process of evolution and emergence. With that note, I would like to request our new dean, I would say, of MICA, Dr. Geeta Hegde, to share her valuable insights on higher education. Over to you, Dr. Hegde.
Thank you, Varsha. And let me first congratulate the authors and editors for touching upon such a pertinent area in the area of education, and especially focusing on the reimagining educational futures in the developing countries, and especially drawing lessons from the health issues that the globe is facing. And as we all know, that has disrupted everything all around us. And indeed, it's an honor to be in the same platform as three legends of marketing, and getting all three of them at one platform and is a rare opportunity for the audiences and the listeners. So I would thank the legends for being here and helping us in the process of the MICA becoming, as Professor Shailendra said, the MICA becoming research oriented, focusing on research, and also becoming thought leaders in the specific areas that each subject matter expertise are working on. We all know that the developing world especially has unique and multi-dimensional issues, and so much so, especially in the area of education itself. So the authorities in India are actually doing a lot of work and looking at how and have come up with new education policies to see how these issues can be tackled. In my mind, two of the major areas that has to be looked into is the inequality and not being able to access by everybody of everyone in for quality education. So rightly, the new education policy has two of its major pillars, that is how to see that there is equal access to quality education by all stakeholders and students across the country, and also the equality that the aspects that will provide for the for education across the country. So I think I'm sure that the authors have drawn solutions from various other countries, and also seen given a pathway to how to handle these issues, and we so look forward to reading the book, Varsha and the authors as well, and other editors and authors. Without much ado, I am looking at how the legends will give us what the legends have to say about this, and the insights that they give. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Varsha, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hegde, for the kind words. And I think you correctly pointed out about the new education policy, which is going to be the next area of research, how it would span out and make the higher education more inclusive in the tech-driven environment. So thank you so much. We are extremely grateful for your insights. And with that, I would like to invite Tanmay, our PGP student, to take the event forward. Tanmay, over to you.
Thank you. And now for the valuable moment we've all been waiting for. The reason we've gathered here as a culmination of communities, from students to academicians and research scholars from India and all around the world. It is an absolute honor for me to invite our keynote speakers, co-editors, Associate Dean, Dean, and President to please collectively unravel the book by hoisting their copies up in the air for our audience.
Can we request Professor Mehta also to...
Professor Mehta.
Can I request all the guests to please show the copy of the book so that we have a wonderful picture in the virtual space?
Oh, I'm not organized. I have to find it.
So can we have Dr. Mehta?
Due to some issues, Dr. Mehta is not able to switch on his camera. We'll wait for 1 minute.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My library system is not adequate, so
No problem, Professor Ekar, that's fine.
I have it, but you can see it in back of me somewhere.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us for this auspicious and wonderful moment. Really, it's a pleasure to do this launch with all the legends in marketing and the mentors and the guide. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So thank you, Tanmay, and I am extending this gratitude to every one of you, and it's a moment to hear now the global gurus, as our Dean has mentioned. And first of all, I would like to now invite Professor Kotler. And Professor Kotler is, as we all know, the father of modern marketing. He is the S.C. Johnson and Son Distinguished Professor of International Marketing Emeritus at Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University. He's authored over 90 books and is the first recipient of the Distinguished Marketing Educator Award in 1985 by American Marketing Association. He has received several awards and 22 honorary doctorate degrees from several universities, consulted numerous organizations, and he gives immense pleasure for me to invite Professor Kotler with us, and we would be very eager to hear out your insights on higher education. Professor Kotler, over to you. Parth, you can share the slides. Professor Kotler, you have to unmute. Yeah. Professor Kotler, you have to unmute yourself.
There. Can you
Yeah.
hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, perfect.
I said some interesting things before you could hear me. In any case, thanks for bringing together two of my distinguished friends. But the main thing is that your university is going to move into important research into marketing. And the question has to do with how to make education more valuable and meaningful to people in your country and in many other countries. I noticed on page 49 of your book that it's a statement. Universities play these roles through four main organizational pillars. What are the pillars? Curriculum is one, pedagogy is two, three is research and innovation, and four is societal engagement. Well, I want to talk about one of the pillars. I want to talk about curriculum. And there's good. Please go to the next slide. There are three, you have to ask, what's the purpose of education to begin with, and how do you center it in a country? And I want to distinguish three levels. One is a country can provide a provincial education. And by that, I mean something that helps people in their normal lives have a better life and good income and so on. In other words, it stays at the local level, and it makes sure we prepare people for the place they live in and to do a good job. A higher level might have been a humanitarian education, so that we can believe that those being educated start with a interest in humanity and improving the condition of humanity around the world, and knowing the difference between good and bad, and so on. Actually, the third level would be a different level, which would be, no, we want to prepare our people to be cosmopolitans. That is, they should be comfortable in any country of the world. They should value different cultures. They're not so much a person from that country, that they are a world citizen. Now, you have to decide what level of education is appropriate for your target market. Now let's move to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what will the focus be on in dealing with young people and so on? Most of the focus is in a school system is on the IQ. That is, we want people to be able to read and write and have an operating intelligence, in a sense. That is so emphasized that we neglect two other things. We neglect emotional intelligence. And I recommend strongly the work of Daniel Goleman to be read and installed in any educational situation, because learning is much more than just facts and figures and and reading and writing. It's having relationships, social relationships, good, productive relationships with other people, and the kind of the caring. And then there's another thing to remember, and that is there isn't one type of intelligence, the one we call the IQ. There's many intelligences. You know, some people are just gifted with music. They're born with it. And they let's honor that skill set. And some people are born with art in their mind. They see things visually. They can create interesting, wonderful, they can express themselves through art. So we must be sure that we recognize many types of intelligences and help all of them move forward. Next slide, please. I've been very impressed with Sal Khan, if you followed his career. He was a member of a family where he realized that other members of the family were having difficulty learning mathematics. And maybe it had to do with how math is taught or what, but he decided to differentiate instruction for each troubled student. In other words, he wanted to figure out where did they fail in understanding what a percentage is or you know, an equation is about. Where did they fail? And so he started the Khan economy, and most of you know about it, where there's a whole set of instructional tools for history, for computer programming, for grammar, for learning anything. And I just want to say he has expedited the speed of learning for a lot of people. Next slide, please. So I want to distinguish 5 different methods that are being used and which must be taught as mindsets to people. Anyone sort of graduating at some level should know what we mean by the Socratic method. They should be ready to use it. And many of you know what it is, but it involves the fact that 2 or more people get into a dialogue and they're interested in some concept. What is justice or beauty or truth? And they search together through discussion and debate for getting at fundamental truth and knowledge. And they have to start by admitting their ignorance of the subject. And the aim is to lead a person out of ignorance, because the very definition of educate is to lead out of that kind of ignorance. And it's a very dynamic method. But now I want to give you an example of this method. Someone says, what is a fair price anyways? Well, a price is fair if it covers the cost of production plus a profit margin. But then someone might say, but how is the cost of production determined? Was it correctly determined? And in fact, what do you mean by a fair profit margin? And is the price fair to a poor person or unfair? So again, the Socratic method of thinking has to be brought to the attention of young people as they get educated. Next slide, please. I think the students must understand dialectical method. What do we mean by that? Well, we often say that people are not expected to hold 2 opposite opinions at the same time. Like someone may say, I favor capitalism. And the other person says, I don't. I favor socialism. When we show the contradiction of caring, you're both a capitalist and a socialist, how could that be? There's 3 choices. That person either accepts that he's only one of those, he made a mistake, he's not both, or he finds a way to synthesize the best virtues of both systems and calls it, he says, I'm a social capitalist, because he's using a methodology that underlies dialectical method, which is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And then he can comfortably carry on both opinions and understands that this is a sign of his creativity to be able to do that. So an example, a business owner is trying to decide between making his own ads or use an advertising agency. Now that's a contradiction. He's got to go one way or the other. No, it is not a contradiction. He could do this. He could say, for certain types of advertising that needs to be done, I can do it by myself better than the ad agency. For other types, the ad agency will do it. So again, the dialectical method helps out. Now let's talk about a third method, and that's simulation. All of our students should get experienced in the real world. You can't take them into factories, but you could take them into stores and shopping centers. But even before that, how about creating a simulated world? We're now playing around with the metaverse too, but I won't get into that. But simulation it creates a model of a situation or process that can be intervened in to observe different effects. And we know about flight simulators, weather simulators, infectious disease simulators, and so on. Climate change model would simulate what the climate will be like in Florida if certain things happen, and so on and so forth. So an example. Well, here I go back to the famous debate called the limits to growth, which took place in the 70s, where a model was created to show what would happen to the world economy and society if we didn't put certain interventions and controls on things happening. And the model predicted a kind of a poor outcome for many, many people, and argued that we now need to exercise as a world a better set of controls over what's happening. So please take some time to look at the limits to growth model and debate of the past. But the main thing is the third tool that I would recommend in the training of students is simulation. Let's go on to the next and fourth method. I call this evaluation modeling. We are facing a choice between two solutions to a problem, and which is the better solution? The method we have come up with is called benefit cost analysis. So for each solution, we sum up all the benefits in dollar terms and all the costs in dollar terms. And we choose the solution that yields the highest benefit cost ratio. Now, an example of that method, which we should teach the students. This example, McDonald's is trying to decide between two locations in Chicago. I could have said Mumbai or Delhi, to locate a new McDonald's outlet. So they enumerate all the benefits and all the costs of the two locations, A and B. They will choose a location A if in fact it has a higher ratio of benefit to cost. Okay, that's a way of thinking that must be built into the curriculum. Next slide, please. I have one more model to examine. I call this the counterfactual method. Very interesting. It involves changing what actually happened in the situation and trying to tease out the different possibilities that might have resulted. For example, what if the South had won the Civil War in the United States? What would the South have done? What would have happened to the people in the North? And that is going to tease out a lot of thinking. What if Nazi Germany won World War II? Now, in that case, there's an actual movie about that Japan and Germany both won the war, World War II, and it's called something like The Captain at the top. I forget the title of the movie. But the main thing is the counterfactual method gets the students to really think, not about only what happened, but what if the other thing has happened? An example, suppose the US government passes a law banning all pharmaceutical products. All pharmaceutical advertising. In other words, the pharmaceutical companies have drugs, but they can't advertise them. If you were a pharmaceutical company with a good, important drug, and you're stopped from advertising, what would you do? How would you handle that? Well, that comes out of counterfactual thinking. So let me go to the next slide, which is almost the last one. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. Well, I do have a sixth one, learn by doing. Suppose you understand, you're supposed to understand customer buying and what happens when they come to buy a new car. There are three methods of figuring out the answer to what is driving customer buying of a product. First method would be ask marketing in the buying situation. After all, you can go to Professor Jagdish Sheth. He has a whole model of customer buying behavior. Or you could observe buyers in the dealership and how they move and transact. And in other words, listen to the conversation and try to figure out what operated to get that purchase going. Or you could become a customer waiting to buy a car and going through all of it, except buying the car, but experiencing what was driving you to get interested and why did you stop at a certain point and say, I'm not buying a car. So you can learn by observing others or observing oneself in a situation. Next slide, please. So I have mentioned 6 things that should figure into the curriculum of the training of young people, so they are not thinking in a bland, mechanical way, but there are so many mindsets. And let me end with one more slide. Next slide, please. And maybe you've heard this many times from the great futurist, Alvin Toffler. We often believe that the illiterate are people who can't read or write. And he says, yes, that is a form of illiteracy. But the fact is, the real illiteracy comes about from people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn, because the world keeps changing and much of what we have learned is no longer applicable, and new things have to be learned that are applicable. So thank you very much for my effort to share with you curriculum issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kotler. I think every time we hear you starting from our first journey of marketing until now, there's so much to learn from you. And you correctly pointed out we have to unlearn, relearn, and then the learning is again a journey which has to go on. In this tech-oriented environment, it's all the more very important. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, and we are extremely grateful. I'm sure the audience have learned so much from your thoughts. Now we move on to our second keynote speaker, which is Professor David Tucker. He is another distinguished professor, and he's known as father of modern branding. He is the vice chairman at Prophet, brand strategist, and the author of more than 100 articles and more than 18 books he has written. He is recognized authority on branding and has developed several recognizable concepts, including the Aker brand vision model. He has numerous awards, and his contributions are primarily for the science of marketing. And in 2015, he was inducted into the American Marketing Association Hall of Fame for his lifetime achievements, which he has done for the marketing discipline. And I'm so excited to have Professor David Tucker today with us as our second keynote speaker. And now I would request Professor Ecker to share his insights about reimagining higher education. Professor Ecker.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be alongside Jag and Phil, two of my long-time friends and colleagues and role models, I should say. I'm going to talk about accessibility largely, that Varsha said is one of the the challenges that face all of us in education. And I want to do this by looking at a small segment of education, and that is the MBA program, and in more general, business education. And I would just maybe start with an observation. The number of MBAs increased something like 4 times from 1970 to 2000 in the U.S. And that was largely driven by a major innovation, and that was the idea that you can get an MBA and without leaving your job, and that really changed what MBA education did. And those programs gradually became respectable over time. And in 2000 to today, the MBA education population has increased by 2. It's doubled. And most of that increase has come from online education. I'm not talking about hybrid, I'm talking about online education. And I want to take a closer look why that happened and see what we can learn from that. So actually, 2 years ago, the number of online MBAs became more than 50% of all MBAs in the U.S. It became 40% in the rest of the world, and in both cases, the trajectory is amazingly upward. Now, the very top schools like Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Northwestern, they've not jumped onto this bandwagon because their prestige is all based on differentiation, and they don't want to get in what they regard as more of a commodity education. So they stayed away, but that's a small percentage of the capacity for MBAs. And most of the others have jumped on the bandwagon. Much of the top 50 schools, in fact, have done so. And why is that? Why is Indiana, Arizona State, Santa Clara, USC, North Carolina really exemplary schools? Why have they taken this plunge, and many others? Well, I identified 4 reasons. One is that the convenience is just overwhelming. And now, not only do they have to not quit their jobs, they don't have to travel to some inconvenient site, maybe some site that's not feasible to travel. I mean, if you're in Africa or you're 100 miles outside Mumbai, it's not feasible for you to go there and each weekend or a weekend a month and attend school. So that's really the first thing. The second thing is cost. And a school now can expand its student population and its impact, therefore, without building buildings. And they can just hire faculty, but they can do that in a much more cost-effective way because the role of the faculty is going to change. And students, they don't have to spend money on travel, and more important than money maybe is time. And furthermore, they can see less tuition. They can see bargains all over the place. They don't have to necessarily go to Stanford and spend $200,000 to get an education, an MBA education. And the third is really interesting. The experience is getting close to being a resident MBA now. It's getting very close. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's getting close. First of all, take the campus experience. These schools, these top 50 schools at least, are now getting these students in the online program to come to campus for a week to start their adventure. They get to know the campus. They have an intense learning experience around a case or a project. They get to know their fellow students. And so it really sets a platform that's quite different than when you didn't have that. A lot of them have immersion experiences where the students, in addition to that, will gather somewhere, maybe at campus, maybe in Africa, maybe in Washington, or maybe New York, and tackle some industry problem. And then the in-class experience is close to the campus. You can have case discussions on a Zoom platform. And what's interesting is the breakout things, which has become an important part of case discussions, is now incredibly convenient and fast. You don't have to walk to a breakout room. You don't have to be in a building that has exactly the right breakout rooms. The breakout facility is incredible. And then these people now have learned how to network. They have Zoom groupings for all sorts of things, for events, for studying, for doing homework, and for doing group projects. And at USC, there's a cohort. The online groups forms a cohort, a larger group that provides a way to network. Probably in some respects better than being an on-campus student. And then you have these people now have learned to get access to campus assets, the networking programs, the career counseling, and so forth. And the fourth thing is it's now accepted, just as part-time evening or executive MBA programs for a long time were looked down on, and they became gradually accepted as okay. But now online programs are becoming accepted, largely because of these top 50 schools are doing these innovative things to make them effective. Just a couple of other observations about online education. First of all, how do you scale it? How do you have, instead of a class of 40 or 25, a class of 1,000 or 1,500? And what you have to realize in doing so, you do have to make trade-offs between access to professors and all the advantages of scaling, and these enormous cost advantage and accessibility advantages. And but the key is the faculty and who does the teaching. And so you're going to have to see to reduce the quality degradation, you're going to have to see more faculty manning a course. So instead of one faculty, you might have 3 or 5 faculty to manage a 2,000 student course, so that the students still get access to a faculty member, so they can still hold office hours, so they still can have the access to some group discussion during that time. And there'll have to be how we handle large lectures at Berkeley and at the University of Indiana. We have a lecturer. I was one. I taught undergraduate marketing at Berkeley, and I had a lecture, and that lecture, I might add, was incredibly polished. And I had videos, and I had guest speakers, and it was really, and I had jokes that reappeared from year to year, and it was really exceptionally good lectures. And then it was supported by a weekly discussion section that was taught by a TA. So I think that in the future, we're going to have a whole new occupation of TA that perform this role that TAs have performed. And I'd look at the medical field. And now in the medical field, we have, to supplement doctors, we have nurse practitioners. And they are people that can write prescriptions, and they can serve 80% of the medical problems that walk in the door. 80%. And they have always a doctor that's a backup, so they get that backup if they need it. But I think we're going to have a new profession that will emerge in education, and they will be the nurse practitioners of the MBA program. And they will be able to handle discussion sections. They will be able to give one-to-one contact, and they were going to be able to call on the professor when needed. And so they'll both have a strong role in teaching these large classes. And I think the key to all this is going to be the brand, because people want credibility in this offering, and so you're going to need to get credibility. And one way to get it is to have some of these top 50 schools that have enormous credibility, to have them enter this business and show how to do it in a way that is comparable to an on-campus MBA system. But I think there's other ways. You can see some online programs become specialized. they be specialized around hospitality, around marketing research, around personal finance or something, or accounting. And so this arena of special occasion will say, okay, this one is not a top school. It's not like Northwestern or Wharton, but in the field of hospitality, Cornell for a long time had a reputation in hospitality. In the field of hospitality, this is really good. And it may be an international business or international marketing. So anyway, you can pick out a specialty and become really good at that. And you can use big names, guest speakers. You could have CEOs or thought leaders that have lectures, maybe recorded lectures that you can sprinkle in, and you can say that our program has a set of guest lectures that will affect your experience. And one more thing, I want to talk about executive education and how that will be affected. And just let me give you two examples. One is called Section 4. It's developed by a friend of mine, Scott Galloway. And he was taught branding at NYU for a long time. And he has now developed a company. He's got funding of $35 million. It's not a trial balloon here. And he's teaching course sections with 1,500 students in it. And what he's doing is taking a popular course in an MBA program at Wharton or Harvard or wherever, and he's often getting that professor to offer an online course that will deliver maybe 60% to 70% of the value of the course that in the resident college, and he'll do that in a sprint that'll last 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and he can do that in sort of 10 or 15% of the cost you would pay if you're sitting in the classroom at NYU or Harvard or wherever, and it can do it for 1% of the cost of actually going to Harvard and sitting there for 2 years when really you really value most there's 1 or 2 or 3 courses. And he can give you access to those courses at, say, if you take 3 courses, 3% of the cost of going to Harvard, forgetting the cost of leaving your job for 2 years. And let me give you one other example. Goldman Sachs has a program called 10,000 Women, where they in 2008 they developed this program to educate entrepreneurs in the third world, people that don't have access to education at all, really. And they trained them in business management. And they did that through local colleges, all through the third world, in developing countries. And they taught them marketing research, how to write a business plan, how to get money, how to raise money. And they created really informed women entrepreneurs in those countries, and those women incidentally would mentor themselves 8 or 9 others. So their impact goes beyond the 10,000 women, which is already quite a big impact. And they gave them access to capital. They created a alliance with an affiliate of the World Bank to give access to capital to those women. And after 10 years, they achieved their goal. They reached 10,000 women and they doubled the goal. And the interesting thing is, when the pandemic hit, they had a really problem because people couldn't go to these colleges throughout the developing world. And they went to more online education, and their program exploded in their ability to give access to women. So anyway, I think that access, which, as Varsha said, is one of the key elements to what we're trying to do. And I think online education, and again, not a hybrid, but a true online education is really the key. And we have to understand why this has flourished, and look at the role models who have really done it well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor Ekar. I think this is commendable because it's about the access, it's about the affordability of our education, and irrespective of the geographical location, you cited excellent examples to mention how it spans out and how the learners can actually get the best faculty across the globe. So thank you so much. I think this was very insightful and we are extremely grateful. And now we have none other than Professor Sheth. And I think he also has the similar views. And Professor Sheth, as we all know, is the renowned scholar, global thought leader, and he is awarded Padma Bhushan, and that is India's highest civil award for non-residential Indian, for literature and education, and has published more than 300 papers, more than 30 books across disciplines. And currently he is the Charles Kalstad Professor of Business at Emory University. And he received an honorary doctorate from University of Illinois, consulted various organizations, and also believes in nurturing human beings and believes in the Uberization of higher education exclusively. So with that note, I would like to invite Professor Sheth.
Thank you, Varsha, and thank you, Phil and David, for joining the session. I learned a lot from both of you. In fact, very insightful comments and very good different perspectives. Mine is another perspective, and that is primarily looking at the impact of technology, especially digital technology, on future of higher education, basically transformation of higher education. Just as corporations are through digital technology transforming the companies altogether, as you know, all the consulting practices are toward digital transformation of corporations, from governance to processes to everything. I think higher education as an industry will also go through significant transformation, which is the theme of what I will talk about. Let's go to the next slide, please. Digital technology will be more transformative of society than any other prior technology. Agricultural technologies, industrial technologies, of course, and we have also innovated services technologies. Impact is not just limited to the products and the offerings, but to the society as a large. Think about that one. At the turn of the last century, which is only about 20 years ago, there was no WhatsApp, no Facebook, no Google, no YouTube, no Skype or Twitter, and I definitely need to add, obviously, TikTok. The internet and World Wide Web have reduced the degrees of separation to one. Famous author, of course, was a psychologist at Columbia University who coined the 6 degrees of separation. Today, I can, with one hop on a Google search, find the person no matter where that person is, or an event, or anything actually. And I experiment quite a lot to see how far the database is there and how deep the database is there on any matter between Wikipedia and typical Google platform. Smartphones, cloud computing, and apps for everything. Apps are getting everything. Even mundane things now we have apps. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Instagram, WeChat have surpassed more than 3 billion users. In fact, the largest nation in the world are no longer India and China, but I call it a Facebook nation, which is about 2 billion people active. They have their own governance. They behave in a way that we have never analyzed because they don't have a single national identity or a culture in the way we think about that one. Digital technology, next page, please. There is more user-generated content today, Wikipedia and YouTube as examples, than what the publishing industry is generating. Publishing industry is going through a massive transformation from print to video media, as I will talk about in a minute. Today, Google provides information across national, linguistic, and cultural boundaries. It's incredible. This is much bigger than Library of Congress or any of the large centralized libraries. I'm just amazed how much content Google has created or aggregated or captured, organized it like a great library. and the access and affordability is very good. Digital storage is cheaper than paper. While we have thought about quite a lot of applications, the apps that we have, but in computer area, we have done a lot of research actually, storage is the key transformation. Imagine the amount of things we can store today on a flash drive. I mean, it's incredible. I can store all my life on a flash drive. The capacity is rising more and more. 60 gigabits, 140 gigabits is nothing today, and the technology is moving very fast. Digital content can be stored and curated cumulatively and indefinitely. There's nothing like that ever before. So main point I want to make is that if neither the public policy, like the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education, or accreditation bodies, such as the ASCSB for business, and there are similar accreditation bodies, will transform higher education as much as digital technology. Next page. So this is very key initiative. Fundamentally, what does digital technology will do? Very simple. Most of the education in a brick and mortar is a phenomenon is time-bound and location-bound. Think about in a classroom, this is the time in which I go and teach. Another classroom at the same time, and the scheduler has a hard time figuring out how to allocate those spaces based upon enrollments of different classes. So this time-bound becomes time agnostic. I can offer a class in the midnight and people will come, especially working professionals, to take this class at midnight. It will be the convenience of their home, for example, or their workplace, wherever they are. And location bound becomes location agnostic. It is not this specific place where you come, but anywhere you are, anywhere, anytime kind of a notion that comes about. So just as planes, trains, and automobiles enable personal mobility, my mobility as a human being going from place to place, the internet will enable knowledge mobility. I think that's a very important thing to think about, because higher education is in the business of creating knowledge, disseminating knowledge, and using knowledge as a base to basically unlock the potential of others. There are three things we do as academicians. One, of course, is teach, which is an emphasis we already saw in the first two presentations. We do research, and we do administration or leadership. So I'll talk about very quickly each one of them. I will not go into all the details behind each pie or the pie chart, but first main point is that now library goes to the laptop. Used to be I had to go to the library in my days, and I took a pride. Best universities were the ones with the highest number of best books, rare books, contemporary books, and magazines. The stacks were incredible. Today, all of that comes to my laptop. That's fascinating. Key change. Classroom goes flipping. I don't have to do lecture in the classroom. I can have my lecture videotape, and I can use one of the methods that Phil Kotler talked about. It is Socratic method, for example, dialectic method. He has talked about 6 of them, but I can use several of those in the classroom in a more productive dialogue and interaction. I have a new phrase in a whole presentation called the 3 I's of learning. Industrial age, we started with 3 R's of learning: reading, writing, and arithmetic. In the knowledge economy, what is going to happen is that it'll become 3 I's of learning. Learning has to be individualized, even in a large mass scale, I can individualize learning. So somebody are fast-moving students, somebody are staying behind, slightly slow learning, whatever it is, I can do that thing today. Second thing is that the learning will be interactive. In other words, there is a dialogue between the student and the like a educator, education practitioner, like a nurse practitioner that David talked about, or whatever turns out to be. I can have that kind of interaction that I can create much faster, much better in the online environment. And the third one, of course, is integration. We always have struggled about trying to say what is common between mathematics and music, or mathematics, music, and computer science. They're all languages. there's a syntax, there's a semantics, there's a usage or pragmatism. We can go to that meta level and say there is something commonality between physics and chemistry, between business and non-business, for example. I think that integrated knowledge is very key. So we'll see the rise of more cross-disciplinary teaching or research for that matter. Unprecedented scope and scale. I can go anywhere. In fact, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, where I taught for many years, decided, I think 5 years ago, not to have physical classes, regular MBA, one-year MBA, specialized courses, but made the risk of going on Coursera. Today, they have about 5,000 or 6,000 students. The fees are the same as the residential students will pay. So all the foreign students don't have to double their fee. They have been able to organize this on a global basis, and the revenue flow is enormous. No business school have ever imagined in the traditional brick and mortar way to raise the revenue of $17, $18 million annual run rate with 3 graduations, just goes on and on. And Coursera is not necessarily the best platform. It is so early stage, I can improve on that quite a lot to make the education and the experience in a virtual world even better than actually what I can do in a physical world. Global reach. I can reach the world. MOOCs and everywhere. We have already seen this thing like Coursera, edX, for example, MIT, Harvard collaboration. There are many more platforms like that. Pearson has a platform of its own. 24/7 by culture, virtual communities and clubs. I can organize. Students like to have clubs and organize it. There is no time limit. I can do it anytime. Campuses will become very smart. We just invested enormous into digital technology by having a hologram where a speaker can come in the classroom as if virtually it's a physical person talking to you. And social activism on campus. This is very important. With social media so immersive into the campus life, you'll see more social activism, causes, etc., debates, discussions on the campus. It always used to be the case in emerging economies. There are many, many instances in Cairo, for example, Cairo University, where students always have been very activist. I think this will amplify quite a lot. So let me just summarize. Just as printing transformed non-literate oral to literate written education, digital technology will transform literate to visual education. We will not have printed books, we'll have visual video chapters, but print will be supplemental. Right now, print is the main thing, and we of course have video as a supplemental. So when peripheral becomes core, which is online, will core become peripheral? It's a key question we have to raise. Next slide, please. What about research? First of all, research will have much greater diffusion of new knowledge. We have seen this thing today. I get the article accepted and immediately the publisher puts it on the web before it is physically printed and sent to my house or my office space. Global impact. I can now have a publication or research idea impacted globally. In fact, Phil Kotler does quite a lot of that. And so does David Acker in his field of branding. Worldwide access to publications. In other words, my publications can reach anywhere in the world today. And I have experimented quite a lot using typical social media platforms like LinkedIn to see where it goes, just to trace it, just to get an anecdotal experience of some sort. Worldwide research collaboration. This is very key. Scientists have different traditions in different cultures, countries, universities they went. We can put together a team of different perspectives to have a group analysis or a research done today much more possible. In fact, if you go back to the origin of internet, that's how it began as a DARPANET, for example, where mainframe computer and the scientists were asked to collaborate without physically meeting together. And today we have seen the fusion of disciplines. I can now fuse disciplines much better than ever before because of technology. Think about AI and marketing. Hottest topic today, machine learning and marketing and finance. I can fuse disciplines and come out with knowledge that nobody had imagined because knowledge still is very much in silo we are more like experts in many ways, high degree of specialization. Our left finger does not know the right finger within the business discipline, business and non-business disciplines. I think this technology will enable us to do more of fusion thinking as opposed to improving our own discipline. Online academic publications, which we have seen that thing today, open access is one key example. Major scientific breakthroughs. IBM Watson today is able to compete very well the human mind. And this is very interesting area. I've written about a new book I'm writing about when the virtual becomes real. Artificial becomes real. Very fascinating. So IBM Watson can actually outsmart a chess player. Today it's possible. AI technology is coming in a big way, which will change. And last one is the point I think that was made by David, which is very key, celebrity scholars and scientists. Celebrities don't have to come from movie theaters or entertainment, or athletes, for example, or gurus for that matter, but we can make scholars and scientists celebrities, which is a huge upside monetary aspects, but also impact aspects in many ways. In other words, the traditional division between spiritual leaders, for example, and scientific researchers goes away in the process. The elitism of top universities and journals will give way to democratization of scholarship. I'm strongly a believer because the elitist schools have been gatekeepers. Journals, definitely. Academic journals. I think today with open access journals, this is becoming very different world. Next area, and the last one, and quickly I was finished also my presentation, impact on leadership. Greater transparency and community engagement. Where today the job of a president of a university is very, very difficult. You know, in the case of a corporation, there are fewer stakeholders besides shareholders, community, etc. The number of stakeholders for the academic institutions is quite large. Everybody becomes a stakeholder. We all live in a digital fish bowl. We like to fish in a digital bowl. Everybody is curious about what we do. They watch constantly what we do. And those who have no stake become stakeholders out of nowhere. So given that kind of a thing, greater transparency is very important. There is no separate thing of my personal life and my professional life. Today I can, through data access, easily figure out all the transgressions you might have made in your personal life, thinking it will have no impact on your professional career or vice versa for that matter. It's all blurring the boundary. Managing acrimony in the ivory tower. We'll have more debates. We think political acrimony is out there right now, not only just elections, but ideology between the extreme right and extreme left. I think is going to amplify more in the academic world. We are very jealous and protective of our discipline and perspective, and we don't want to consider other disciplines or perspectives. Economists think in a certain way, psychologists think in a certain way, and if you try to question capitalism, let's say through competition, you're basically a heretic. Nobody wants to listen to you. We are very religious in that way, strongly protecting and advocating our belief systems. It's possible that today we'll get more acrimony than ever before. Developing global mindset would be very key because the world gets much smaller in the process. I have access to people, knowledge, information from anywhere in the world on a real time, on alerts I get, for example, Google as a platform, social media as a platform, etc. CIO in the cabinet. This is the Chief Information Officer. At the university level, you will have to have a very strong IT presence. Professional versus professorial versus professional staff. This is, I think David was hinting to on the teaching side, but I think we'll have the similar people who will not be necessarily the typical PhDs to become administrative leaders. You have people without degrees becoming administrative leaders as a support part of the cabinet. Who owns IP rights? This is one I'm working quite a lot, surprisingly. because in the digital world, there are no IP rights because they were all founded on patent laws on industrial products. Today, I can mix and match and blend things. The identity goes away. I'm like a chef. I have Morton salt, and Morton brand is gone. I have another brand of sugar, it's gone. A spice brand like McCormick is gone. It's my recipe now. Sitting in front of a Mac computer or a Sony hardware software combination, I can make a movie today, not just a documentary, fully blown, sitting in just in front of my screen if I'm a good storyteller, and I can make that movie under $250,000 for a big screen in a regular theater. Economies of scale is mind-boggling here. And Blair's Witch was the last movie made under $5 million. This is 10 years ago, and they earned $15 million. So there's no need for this one mega movie at, for example, $1 billion cost of making it and making money accordingly. I can make movies very cheap and make more margin on those movies ever before, and I own the rights. Very fascinating. I take public information. Michael Moore used to do documentaries. Most of his footage was public, up for grabs essentially, and I can do it. Non-traditional funding. I think we have typically relied on the traditional funding of the donors giving the things, chairs, endowed chairs, etc. Here, the non-traditional funding will come from sources we never imagined possible. Not just the donors or the fees, for example, but non-traditional funding may come from foundations after foundations. They may come from, in fact, communities actually investing in you, etc. Main question is, what business are you in? I think leadership will struggle with this question. What is the business of higher education? And revisiting tenure and promotion. This one was organized for the academic freedom. Today, academic freedom is already given. I mean, I can post things directly all over the world. In my own column, for example, I have the academic freedom. So long as I'm not violating any laws or regulatory aspects or policy aspects of the internet as a platform, I can disseminate knowledge, I can create knowledge. The traditional notion of having 6 years probation with a tenure, associate to full, are all not necessary. It is not surprising that administrative leaders either step down or are fired in less than 5 years of their appointment. This is one of the toughest jobs today administrative leadership is experiencing in the academic world. So let me quickly take last page. I know we are running short. I have more presentation than I probably should have planned. So let me take the last one. Neither public policy nor accreditation processes will be as transformative of the higher education industry as digital technology, which says digital technology actually will impact both accreditation processes and public policy, which is the Ministry of Education. Internet, World Wide Web, laptops, cell phones, as well as broadband networks and digital storage of knowledge will bring disruptive changes in teaching, research, administrative leadership of higher education. Digital technology will transform traditional location-centric and time-centric institutions to location and time agnostic endeavors. The greatest impact will be on teaching. Next page, please. Yes, on teaching. As the library goes to the laptop and classes are flipped. Do not underestimate the power of online degree and non-degree education. What is peripheral today will become core tomorrow, as David very well articulated. Diffusion of new knowledge will be faster as digital technology breaks language barriers and academic organizations become more global. Phil Kotler does enormous amount of speaking all over the world. He does not need translators physically. I've done in Europe with 4 or 5 language translators sitting in booths. Today, Google will do it automatically, or a Zoom can do it even for that matter. It's all mechanized. So I can go across linguistic barriers, cultural barriers, much easier than ever before. Diffusion of new knowledge will be faster as digital technology breaks language barriers and academic organizations become more global in their mindset. Next page, please. Worldwide research collaboration and funding, as well as fusion of disciplines, is a new reality. This will lead to more scientific breakthroughs. Digital technology will create challenges for leadership of universities and colleges. Managing acrimony in the ivory tower and greater transparency and community engagement will become increasingly important for leaders at the top. You cannot be in the ivory tower yourself, where people come to you because you are the president of the university or you are the dean of the colleges. You have to go out in the field, reach out the community, especially not the student community, but the local community, because quite often we are more like a oasis in a desert. All the neighborhoods are not that good, but we are a knowledge island in some fashion. We are finding more and more you have to engage your local community, even though they may not be your future students, etc. Ecosystem is very important. So managing acrimony in the ivory tower and greater transparency will be very key. Information technologies like breathing air will be everywhere and become a sine qua non for higher education. Therefore, CIO is a key executive position in the President's cabinet. Don't treat the Chief Information Officer as somebody who is administrative. It is the whole library is basically digitized. It is a very strategic position in the same level as your VP of Finance, for example, or the Dean for Academic Affairs, Dean for Student Affairs. He or she has to be CIO, has to be a part of the cabinet going forward. I think that's about all. Let's take the last page maybe and I'll stop. What business you are in will become a persistent question. It is not like 20-year journey. I think this is going to be every 5 years you're going to question because the change is so rapid. 3 things you do not delegate. Generally, I find in my advising to companies, vision is nothing, like no bottom-up vision. It never works. Branding, no bottom-up branding. And IT infrastructure, you must own them at the top. As non-traditional funding becomes increasingly necessary, you will have to revisit existing tenure and promotion policies. The economics of tenure professors are no longer in your favor. If you think this is science fiction, think again. R2-D2 is now a robot companion, and 35mm film cameras are now digital cameras in your cell phone. Think about the cell phone, how my cell phone is doing. It's mind-boggling. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sheth. It was really very insightful, and the perspectives which you provided about the research, teaching, and overall higher education is just outstanding. So there's so much that we have to learn. And primarily when you mentioned about the celebrities do not come from Hollywood or Bollywood, which is true, and we have all the 3 legends with us and the celebrity coming from higher education. So thank you so much for bringing that point, and we have set up the live examples in front of the entire audience. Thank you so much, Professor Sheth.
Let me make one comment.
Sure.
I think MICA is fortunate to have such great scholars and thought leaders as Phil Kotler and David Acker. David Acker was very influential on me for a very different reason. After writing his own autobiography and a journey, coming from a very small place in North Dakota, the Nebraska area, he said, Jag, you have to write your own autobiography. So he is the instigator for writing the book I wrote called The Accidental Scholar. So he was a student, I was in the doctoral consortium, something where we met and became very close friends. So you have great people out there, and I'm so happy to be part of that crowd.
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor Sheth, for sharing that. I think it's very inspirational and motivational, and we are so blessed to have all of you together today. And I think our president, Dr. Mehta, would like to share something with all of us, which is quite interesting. So I would just invite Dr. Mehta now. And
thank you. So So thank you, first of all, to all our guests, Professor Philip Kotler, Professor David Aker, and Professor Jagdish Sheth. To show our gratitude, we are couriering an original piece of art to each one of you. It's called Coexistence, very appropriately. It's by one of our leading artists here in Ahmedabad. Her name is Sharmila Sagara. This is a wonderful silkscreen print, numbered and signed by the artist. So this is just our way of saying thank you. And we really appreciate your taking the time to be with us. Thank you and good night. Back to you, Varsha.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Mehta. I think you made a very important point here by coming up with something which is very close to India. I think that will say loud, and Professor Sheth always says that India goes global now. So thank you so much for bringing this up. Now I would like to invite our co-editor and wonderful friend and scholar, Professor Emmanuel Mogaji, who actually initiated this entire process of higher education and roped us in and made this happen. So he's from Greenwich University, UK. And Professor Mogaji, over to you with the closing remarks and the formal word of thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Varsha. Thank you so much for bringing this together. It's been a pleasure working with you on the book. But I guess this is just for me to appreciate our guests. Yes, as a young scholar, I've actually looked at these scholars and recognize their work, and hopefully one day to meet them. But I guess with the power of technology, yes, I'm based in the UK, and now look at all of us working together and actually in the same virtual room. So thank you so much, Professor Philip Kotler, for your point. Thank you so much for sharing those insights about the different method of teaching. Professor David Aker, yes, thank you so much for the mention of the executive and online education. That's one thing that I actually took away from there. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I can testify to the benefit of the 1,000 women that has really benefited from what the bank has done in creating opportunity for learning. Professor Jack, thank you so much for being a mentor. Yes, Professor Varsha do say a lot about you. And listening to you again, thank you so much for that keyword about the anywhere education. It's been a pleasure listening to all of you. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. Let me also use this time to also appreciate Professor Varsha. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you so much for making this journey very easy. Thank you so much to the editors, to the co-editors of the book, and also the contributing authors. Yes, we need to also acknowledge their effort. And also, I think to sort of reinforce what Professor Jag was saying about Micah. Thank you also to Micah for creating this platform to really bring this global audience together. And also for everybody behind the scene. Yes, Pat, I've seen you before. Yes, thank you so much for the hard work. We see you working behind the scene. And also to all the listeners around the world, to all the members of Micah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the very best. Hopefully, I will get to see you face to face sometime soon. But till then, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Professor Mogaji, and it's always a pleasure to work with you. And there's so much we have learned from all the legends and the different perspectives. It itself is the series of the books that we can actually work upon. So thank you so much for sharing the insights, and we will be back soon with a couple of books that are planned for the next year. And we will see you all soon with all those insights and the legends coming together. And I was telling Dr. Mehta that, online platform provides us the global impact and the reach, so that we reached out to different people across the countries, and we can bring in different legends together, and we can make this happen. And I think I agree with all the points that you have all shared about the online, higher education. So I think I could see that series of books and the papers happening together. And I'm sure our audience has learned so much from all your insights. So thank you so much, everybody. It's been an honor to be part of this process. And thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, everyone.
Are we having a group photograph? I've got a copy of my book.
That's so sweet. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Shah. Thank you, Professor Kotler. Thank you, Professor Ecker, for being with
Thank
us. Thank you so much.